Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello, you wonderful people out there. Thank you for joining us. And I'm not going to go with the normal spiel. Today's number 400 podcast.
Yeah, wow.
We are very happy. We always like the round numbers here at Homeschool Together. And we just wanted to do a short little episode and really a lot of going back in time and thinking about things and thinking about where we're going and thanking everybody who has come along, who listens on the podcast feed and listens on YouTube, who has shared it, who goes into Facebook groups and recommends us. It's very humbling, very humbling. I'm always eternally humbled, about as humbled as I am when I play board games with my little 5-year-old and she smokes me.
She's getting really good.
She's really good. But from Ariel and I would just want to say thank you to everybody who has supported the podcast, who's stuck around, and
totally.
To those who have left and come back, thank you. And we really appreciate it. You guys help guide a lot of times what we're doing. We put out the calls for interviews and everything, and you guys answer the call, and you guys share it with your friends and families who might be learning or thinking about homeschooling. We really appreciate that. It's such a wild thing to create something and put yourself out there, and then to get the love back and all the reviews and everything that comes on that we see is it's very amazing. It's a cool feeling. It's very unique.
Yeah. I can't believe we're at 400. Yeah. I just, looking back when we started this, I don't think I even had this as wow, we could go this far with it. Mm-hmm. I 100% agree with everything, you put yourself out into the world and you have no idea, are people going to hate this? Are people going to be like, well,
I'm so tired of that guy's dad jokes.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I really love this podcast, but her voice is just grating. It just annoys me, whatever it is.
My voice your voice is the nice one. Mine's
no, you got the radio voice. It's one of these things. And we wanted to, just take an episode here and reflect a little bit about how we got started and kind of this journey for us, because this, it's funny. It's like we're kind of living our lives a little bit publicly in some ways, that there's all these other folks who know things about us and know about our little
kiddos,
our kids and their homeschooling journey and and us. And so it's kind of cool. And I've kind of made those relationships with other podcasters before. I remember listening to the Savvy Homeschool Moms way back when, and just soaking up every minute and getting all into it. You felt like they were friends.
Yeah.
And now I kind of feel like that's the way it is with our listeners too. And when people email us, they're like, oh my gosh, I love the show. I've listened to it a long time. And I totally get that feeling. And it's interesting. It's really interesting.
The thing I always love about it is because when we're doing this episode, we're talking to you in your ears. Yes, you. And but really, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, we sit across from each other. We look at each other
in our office, and I'm on our bench, and you're in the swivel chair, and it's not nice looking.
It's messy.
We have our headphone connector. We have our little kind of mixer thing, and it goes into the computer. And I'm looking at the waveform on the computer right now as I'm talking. It's been essentially the same setup for the last 4 years.
So you guys understand our view.
Double monitors though.
Right, we have our nice monitors. We've got various homeschool resource books and some of the books for the countries that are coming up, and our whiteboard of all the stuff we have to do for the podcast,
product ideas, reviews,
things to do, and we've got more computers, one for editing, and a whole bookshelf filled with all kinds of various pieces. It's homeschool stuff and Girl Scout leader binders, and
we've it's basically been this setup, this madness for the last 4 years.
Right.
We haven't improved it very much. We keep trying to improve it, but it just keeps looking the same.
I've got like my backpack filled with my stuff, and some curtains we haven't put up that came in a month ago. It's just
that my mom came home from a vacation and
she
picked up
came
her
home
dog
from
she goes,
London.
Oh, have you put those curtains up? And Errol's like, I haven't put those up yet.
Yeah, so we're not as together, but that's the view from our space.
But that's always been the show is we talk about the good and the bad and the real and the reality of what we're trying to accomplish. And we know you guys at home are doing the same thing. You have the dirty kitchen right now. You have dishes in the sink that you need to go clean, and
you're sitting there with a pile of dirty laundry as I have or clean laundry, as I have upstairs that I have not folded. It's been clean for 2 days. It's okay.
Let's all admit, it's like you right now, you could go do that math lesson, but you're listening to the podcast and finding something else to do right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're totally real. And one of the things just kind of taking it back.
Yeah, no.
We started this in the middle of the pandemic because I was home. I was working remotely, and it was funny. I was spending just all of my free time. Basically, we'd be sitting on the couch, and we'd be watching a show together. Or we'd sit on the couch with our Kindles, and we would read. And I was just like constantly mad typing on my phone, and you kept asking me like, what are you do you have a pen pal? Like, what's going on? You're just constantly on your phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just have so many things to respond to because there's all these people that are reaching out about homeschooling. So our local moms group, friends were emailing me. I was seeing posts on other homeschooling groups for Washington State and our county and things of people saying, help, my kid can't do Zoom kindergarten. Please help. What do I do? And, people trying to give advice. And I just kind of kept coming in going, okay, take a minute, just breathe. It's going to be fine. I was kind of the voice of like, it's all going to be okay. And here's some quick tips to get you started. And I was just, it was constant. Like, and so you had been thinking about starting a podcast.
Well, and I had my bag packed. I had a podcast that I really, really liked that I followed for a couple of years called Rumble Strip Vermont. And I don't even know if it's still going on, but I've been listening to podcasts since 2006. So I was one of those like very early adopters where I had to download the podcast from iTunes and then like manually upload it into the iPod and then I could listen to them. It was all the old school days. But I finally had said, okay, after, oh my gosh, it was almost 13 or 14 years of listening to podcasts, I was finally going to do it because I was like, okay, I've listened to hundreds and thousands and hours and everything. And I had the bag packed. I was going to create kind of like a local podcast, kind of a human interest story type of thing.
Right.
And I had
just varied topics.
And I had it packed. It was like February. I was going to start contacting people. I was going to start making episodes and see if I could put together some things. Right. And then the pandemic hit and I was like, well, that idea is kind of shut down for at least a little while. And then this happened. And I said, well, we should start a podcast. I've always wanted to.
Yeah, you should say, you really said, hey, I wanted to do that podcast, right? And I being the supportive wife, was like, oh, yeah, totally. No, I support you. Yeah, you already got the equipment, right? You're like, yeah. Maybe the podcast should be about homeschooling. And I was like, oh, well, I know a lot about homeschooling. Yeah, you should do that. And you go, oh, no, not me. We. And I'm like, wait. No. I'm the anonymous person on Facebook. I'm just answering questions to people. I'm not gonna talk on like the radio kind of thing. And you're like, it's gonna be fine. It's fine. And I saw this glimmer in your eye, and I was like, this isn't good. I said, no, it'll be great. We'll just. It will be really easy. We're going to keep it really, really short, really snappy. You had all these goals. It's going to be like under 20 minutes. And don't worry, I'll do most of the talking and I'll just ask you questions. And so it's funny if you've listened to enough of this, and I know some of you have listened to all 399 episodes before this, and which I thank you for. You know that the format is that Matt kind of introduces the topic to kind of ask me a question, and then I answer it. That was built from the very beginning because that was our agreement, that you were like, don't worry, I'm going to host the show and I'm just going to ask you a question as if I were a mom on Facebook, and you're just going to answer me. And so you don't have to worry about talking into this microphone, babe. It's going to be fine. And I was really, really hesitant. I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And you're like, no, it's great. You're like, well, hey, look. What's the worst that could happen? It's $19 a month for Fireside hosting. It's like really cheap. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll just do a couple and we'll see what happens.
And we've always said, we kind of said, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to, give it a go. And we said, okay, let's try after a year. If we don't want to do it again, we just shut it down. It's no big deal. And then that became 2 years and 3 years and 4 years. And we always continue to revisit that same question of like, you don't have to continue to do this all the time. So we always keep revisiting it. And every time we do it, we say, no, we're happy continuing the podcast and, continuing doing this and putting out content and everything. And so, yeah, it became kind of this like rolling kind of thunder type of thing.
Yeah. It just, it started low. And I said to you like, well, I mean, we have like, almost a kinder child where, she was like 4 at that point. Yeah. And so I said, like,
but we had been doing homeschool. Like that was the weird thing, is that we were doing early homeschooling, and you're right. All of our friends were contacting us because it wasn't that we had just prepared for pre-K, and we were starting to get ready for kindergarten. And because you're the project manager of this house, you're not thinking about pre-K and kinder. You're thinking first, second, third. You're thinking long-term as opposed, as well as the short-term questions and, answering those short-term issues that we might have to deal with together with our children, but also getting the planning and the books and all this stuff. And it really like keyed in on your ability to manage things. Yeah. That's why I think people saw you, even within our own circles, as like an authority. They were coming to you saying, what do I do? Like, okay, well, here's the track.
Right. Because we'd been researching. We tell this funny story about, we'd been planning to homeschool our kids since we were dating. And which was,
it's true.
Like 2004.
4 or 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Around 2005-ish was when I remember we were sitting in our first house together and we were like, yeah, we're going to homeschool our kids. So yes, so this is how long we've been thinking about it. And the planner that I had been researching it since about the time we got married in 2009. So I mean, I hadn't been doing it a whole lot of time before we started this podcast, but I've been researching it forever and listening to all the podcasts and reading all the books and getting all the materials and stuff. So I remember telling you like, I can't say I'm an expert in this. And you said, hey, look, we don't have to be experts. We just have to be genuine. And if we don't know something, we'll just do the research. We'll look it up and then we'll tell people, hey, this is what we found. Mm-hmm. Not like I'm the world's greatest authority, but this is what we found. So that's how I've always tried to approach it. We have all these different informational episodes, and there's definitely, we have a lot of our own thoughts about it and things that have worked for us and whatever, but we also I do a lot of research and get that experience from other families and other experts and what they say, and kind of try to give you all the Cliff Notes version, so you don't have to read through 25 articles or whatever that people have written. You can just see like, okay, here, let me break it down. And I try to break it down kind of like an outline format. Like, okay, here's the main topics, and here's how we move through our outline, because that's how my brain works. Hopefully that works for you all. But
well, it keeps us on task. It keeps the MC, me, moving the show along, and it helps, get good show notes and all that type of stuff. So yeah, like we're very much on the same wavelength of like presenting the material and that type of thing. So
right. It's funny because you now do a lot of presentations for your writers group, and our styles of the way we present things and the way we organize information is very similar. So I think it kind of works well. But behind the scenes, I make the show notes, and you do the hosting, keep us on track, and you do all of the editing. So you do all of the sound mixing and all of that, and all the technical work, and I do all the research. So it's a really good partnership, and I love doing this with you.
I do.
It was something that I have to say at the beginning, I didn't have a reason to say no. And I was like, I'm just going to be a good wife. I know you've always wanted to have a podcast, and I'm just going to be here for you with this. And then the more we got into the planning of it and thinking about it, the more excited I got about it. And then we started it, and I was like, oh, wow, I actually really love this. And so I'm so glad you talked me into it, because people always say, like, do something you're really passionate about. And I'm not really passionate about my job. I like the company that I work for, and they're all really nice people, and I think I do something that's important and good, valuable.
Cool product, yeah.
Cool, yeah. We're making medical devices that helps people. Great, I mean, I feel fine about it. It's great. Yeah. I really like where I work, but it's not like a passion. And I have to say that this podcast and really the helping families part of this is the first thing I've ever felt passionate about that was like a project, a work. And that's why we say, this is our passion project, because for me, it really feels like that.
From my standpoint, I think that comes through. All your work and everything really helps to, I think, make the show complete and all the planning. I don't know if I don't have the planning drive that you have. Yeah. And so you're way more talented at that than I am. And so that, that really helps, me continue to, push forward. I would struggle at managing that, but.
And I wouldn't be able to do all of the technical, and the painstaking way that you listen to every episode, especially the interviews that we do. I mean, you listen really closely. You're really trying to make them be, just the best that they can be, and make those folks that have decided to come on the show just sound the greatest that they can, which I so appreciate your technical ability with that. I think, and you're the encouragement piece, because I'm really passionate, but I do sometimes get like, I don't know what we're going to do the next episode about. And you're like, okay, I have all these ideas, no, it's great. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So you're that kind of that emotional engine that keeps me going when I'm like, I don't know where to go next, or gosh, I did something like I did 50 kindergarten books that we love. I loved that series on YouTube, and like nobody watched it. I was so excited about this because I picked the greatest books, and I thought they were just amazing kindergarten books.
And you did a great job reviewing each one.
I did, and I felt like it was so good. And the cover art for YouTube was so on point. Yeah. And nobody watched it, because I thought, okay, cool, I'll start this, and then we'll start doing like book reviews, and then we'll get really cool new children's books to review. And
it was really about the free book swag.
Well, I just wanted access to all these super cool new books, you know? Right, yeah. And I wanted to, get to share them with our kids. And I had this whole thing, and nobody watched it. So not everything works out. We try things. Yep. I tried game break unit studies, one day unit studies, which some people really liked, but for the most part, almost no one downloads. So I always get like one email a year, like, do more game breaks. I love these. But they take like, 8 hours per to do them. And then I play test them with the kids and stuff. And, like 3 people download them. So, and then other things have been really great, doing the resource guides, which was your idea. Yeah. You were like, hey, we're talking about all these books and things that we're doing for this around the world study. And you're like, I know I can find amazing YouTube videos. And if you can find the books, so I did all the books and the recipes, and you did all of the videos. And I really think that the reason that those resource guides are as good as they are for all the different continents is purely on the videos. The books are fine. It's the videos. The videos are where it shines, because you took so much time to make sure that all those videos were such high quality. Yeah, no, it was a lot of work. It was a good amount of work. We enjoyed that process. I liked it. For me, like, so for you, like, what is the biggest thing that you've learned? Not just podcasting, but maybe as homeschooling along the last 4 years. Well, I think for the podcasting thing, I think what I've realized is not to go like too far into something as far as setting my heart on something, because you just don't know how it's going to be received, and not that people didn't like it, just that it just didn't like take off, right? Yeah, right. And that whole being found organically is really difficult. It is, because I'm on all these Facebook groups for, all these different homeschooling communities. I can't say a word about the podcast, right? So somebody's asking a question where we just did a whole episode that perfectly would help them and answer them. And I cannot say it. I'm not allowed to say it. I wouldn't say it, right? I'm not going to self-promote. So that's been really hard to just know that like we have to put something out there and hope that people find it and hope that the people that find it tell other folks about it and that they share and that, when they see something come up, they say, hey, Homeschool Together did a really great episode about that. And I see people do that sometimes in different Facebook groups. And that just like brings me a lot of joy because I'm like, oh, I could say it, but you did. And that makes me happy. Because I think the thing that I've learned the most is just that, I'm happiest when I know that we're really helping people. That's what gives me all the feels and satisfaction. Yep. So I just can't beat myself up about it when I did something that I thought would be super helpful and really great and people just didn't click with it or didn't pick it up or find it or whatever. I got to let it go.
No, I agree with you on the helping people side. It's something that's such a big piece of our lives. And it's sort of like, a lot of people, how do you know somebody's, a certain thing, whatever it is, because they told you about it, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. We rarely talk about the podcast or anything with our friends. And
we almost never talk.
We almost never.
A
few people have said, "Are you guys still doing that thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're still doing it." I'm like, "Oh, you never talk about it," because I was like, "Well." Most of them are homeschoolers
or they're not homeschoolers. And I'm like,
not,
well, there's no reason for us to just talk about our homeschool podcast. And it's funny, as many friends as we have that are homeschoolers, very few of them actually listen to.
I don't think any of them have listened.
Actually, or almost none of them. I know one friend does. But other than that, I don't think any of our other friends who are actual homeschoolers actually listen to our homeschool podcast.
No.
Which I think is funny.
It is. It's,
because they're actually our friends. You usually like, well, they're the people that would listen.
It's funny because most of them are not podcasters. And so they don't listen to podcasts. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, of course not.
Even the ones that do listen to podcasts don't listen to our podcast. And this is what's really funny too. I guess you all might be surprised to learn this, that we've done, I feel like at this point, I did not feel like I was very knowledgeable in homeschool when we started this whole thing. At this point, I feel pretty solid, right? Yeah. We know a lot about a lot of different aspects of homeschooling, both from having experienced it, all the research that we've done, and all the interviews that we've conducted. I now feel like the knowledge base that the two of us have about homeschooling is very high. And yet, when our friends have any issues with homeschooling, they never ask us. So if you're all thinking like, oh gosh, I would love to be friends with Matt and Ariel because whenever I ran into something, I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this? Just know, none of our friends ever ask. And we're in a Girl Scout troop that's all homeschool moms. None of them ever ask me. Well, right? Nobody ever says like, hey.
You know what the funny thing is though? Amongst all of our homeschoolers, we almost never talk about homeschooling. Like I don't ask my friends like, oh, how's your math curriculum doing?
I love to talk shop.
Oh, okay. I never talk about shop because I just assume that everybody's doing their thing. Right. And if you have a problem, you're surrounded by homeschoolers. If you got a problem, you ask somebody, right?
But I don't think we do. In general,
maybe that's the difference between the men and the women thing.
But even the women, we don't really talk about it very much. I'm the one who's usually like, so, hey, what curriculum are you using? Hey, how's things going, right?
Because I do ask the curriculum question, but once I find out it's like something I've never heard about or it's some other...
Well, then we want to know more.
Yeah, I want to know a little bit more.
But if it's something we've heard about, I think it's very interesting because... it's as much as I feel like, and I hope this isn't delusional, that we're a resource for the homeschool community, nationwide, and definitely we have, listeners in many countries of the world. So we're a resource for all of these people, but we're not a resource for the people that we actually know in real life that do homeschool. So I think that's kind of funny. just a little chuckle there.
I do find it like, it's interesting because once people get into homeschooling, they start doing it for a little while, they kind of cultivate their own path, right?
I think that's true.
And they've done their research. They kind of know where they're going. Maybe they don't know, the next 4 or 5 years, but they know what they're doing this year. They know what they're probably going to do next year and maybe the year after. And that's about as far out as they need to be concerned about until you get closer to high school. Maybe you start thinking about those type of things. But from that standpoint, it's as we've interviewed more people and as we've done more homeschooling ourselves, while we do feel like we know a lot about this, I do feel like there's a lot out there we don't know about.
Oh, there's so much to learn. I would never, I would never say that we know it all. It would be impossible.
Yeah, because we're really focused on the early learners. Like the handwriting thing is becoming a thing. Writing, actually physically writing sentences and composing thoughts, that's becoming a thing. That wasn't something I was really thinking about a lot about maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, it wasn't on our
and
radar.
That is now like right at the front of my mind now. And then from there, it's going to be like, science and thinking about middle school and now I got standardized testing on the mind. And then once we get into closer to middle school, we're going to start thinking about, we have this program called Running Start here in Washington where we're able to go to community college. And then when our kids graduate high school, they get an associate's degree and their
some amount of college credits.
And I'm starting to think like, okay, maybe in like 5 or 6 years, I'm going to start thinking about that. And then like, that's going to become the new hot thing. And there's going to be all these things I need to learn about and understand and whatnot that we just don't know about, right?
It's just such a big topic, right? I mean, education, all the different topics you could go into. But I think it's interesting, the other parents who have, kindergartners and first graders and things. And they're like, oh, how's that podcast going? It's like, 350,000 downloads, going pretty good. It's amazing, right? We're so stoked about it, but it's funny how little we talk about it with our actual other homeschooling friends, or the interviews that we've done or anything.
Even with like our parents and stuff.
It's kind of funny.
It was funny because wasn't it like a couple of months ago where they said, "Are you guys even doing that anymore?"
Yeah, your parents were like, "So is that still something that's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it's funny. I guess all of this to say, right? I mean, there's so much we still have to learn, so much, but I feel so much more grounded. We have much more of a base now. But it's funny because we share this with each other and we share this with all of you listening, but we actually don't really share this with anyone else. No. It's it's kind of an interesting thing. It's like,
it's a weird paradox. Like like you people who are listening right now in your ears are like our closest friends. And we're telling you about everything that we're doing.
Like you're the only ones we have to really talk to about this podcast that really care, except each other. It's like a private passion project.
No one else
but
we know
except
cares.
It's public.
No one else we know cares. You guys care. We care. Yeah.
It's not like, not that not to disparage, our friends are wonderful. And some of our friends we do kind of talk about it a little bit, but it's just that, there's so many things we are interested in and want to do and so many things we're excited about, but we really just have each other to talk about with them. So when you email us or you Facebook message me or you leave a comment on YouTube. And you say something about how like, oh, what we did really helped you, or, oh gosh, I would love to see you do this, or what do you think about that? And you ask us a question. And sometimes I get these emails. It's like, hey, I don't want to bother you, but what do you think about this? Or have you thought about this for the podcast? I don't think that you all realize that you're not bothering us at all, because it's like, oh, someone wants to talk to me about it, right? Oh, I get to talk to a real person, not just you sitting across from me, about homeschool. Oh my gosh, I'm so jazzed, because I think there's this perception that, all we do is talk about homeschool with people all the time. And that's actually almost never the case. We only really talk about homeschool with each other. And, a couple of friends I talk to about it sometimes, but in general, we're the ones that are talking about homeschooling topics. We're the ones that are talking about, gosh, how do you get over frustration? Or you saying, I'm just having such a down day. Last week you just like needed to vent for hours because you were just having such a frustrating day. How do we deal with that? What are some techniques? Boy, I wonder if that could help somebody. We should do an episode on that. Something's happening with the kids and you're like, write this down, Ariel. We got to do an episode on this, right? This is going to help somebody.
I'm feeling frustrated. I think there are other parents out there who are doing the same.
Right. Or you were, I want to do an episode about kids podcasts for kids that, for different educational topics. And you were just like, oh man, we got to do that. I want to know that information. Like, let's look it up and then let's share it with everybody. So you all listening are really the people we share this with.
Yeah.
Like,
we're thinking about you.
Yeah. It's funny because I know that I've listened to other podcasts before where I really feel like, wow, I'm the recipient of this stuff, but you guys are part of it. I just don't think that you realize, because you're just listening.
You're just a fuzzy microphone in front of me.
but you all are really a part of this, and we love to talk about it, and we love when you send us messages, and we love to, sometimes I'll have people message me a couple of times, and we'll like brainstorm ways to tackle stuff. I totally dig that. Yeah. Now, you may be listening to this years from now, and we're so busy that I have a personal assistant, and I don't do that anymore. If so,
good
that's awesome.
Good problems to have.
Right, and you can talk with Nancy or whoever it is. But I don't think that's going to be the case, because I really do love it. I love the connection part of it. So I've learned that. I think that's the connection, and I just want you all to realize it, because it's really special. And I'm like, I hear from somebody and they're like, yeah, I live in, some crazy place. I have to like look it up on the map and go, oh my God, Matthew, this person is like halfway around the world and they're listening to us right now. We had people listening who were in the like U.S. embassy in Central Africa. And we were like, wow, so if you're listening to us on a military base somewhere, or you live in, overseas somewhere, and you're expats or anything, right? Like, reach out. We have a map. We actually color it in when people contact us from different countries, because it's cool. And for those of you who have, responded to our calls for interviews, we so appreciate you.
Yep.
That's a scary thing to do.
No, it's scary to go on a podcast and you've never done something like that before. And hopefully, the people who have come on have enjoyed themselves, and they kind of see behind the curtain. They see Oz, and they see it's just two people.
So what you guys don't all hear, because Matt does this excellent editing job, is that after the interview, we end up talking to this person for sometimes could be an hour. We've
had like hour-long conversations after the interview. Yeah.
Which is actually like my favorite part. Yeah. We usually try to schedule a little extra time, because we do get chatty, because then it's like, okay, off the record. So like, how's things going? How's your homeschool? What do you think about stuff? And, and I love that.
Yeah. You're talking shop. It feels like it's almost like a meetup,
I
or something,
love to talk shop.
Digital meetup.
So, we've met so many wonderful people. Just
it's been great
families.
It's been a great journey. I have enjoyed it. I think we continue. Hopefully we will, keep going, and, stacking another 50 episodes a year. We'll be at 500 in 2 years, and it'll be a good journey.
I mean, we want to keep going. Definitely. The podcast is where it started. I mean, we've been toying with videoing it at some point, but then I'd have to get out of my pajamas. And right now I'm wearing pajamas and my shirt is stained with brownie batter. So, there would be some differences.
There's higher standards. I don't know if we're able to reach those.
I'm not sure that we're ready yet, the state of this office.
And it's 11:03 at night.
I'm not sure that we're ready for prime time, but we do want to continue, and we do want to continue to review curriculum, and we are going to continue to build the curriculum database for folks, and and other resources. So if there's something that would really help you, like, please do reach out to us, because we want your ideas and your input.
And we appreciate everybody and all the support we've gotten and everything. And kind of keen on what you said before, the whole podcast has always been about helping people. You can see, because we don't do a Patreon, we don't do any of these other things. We don't have any ads on our shows. We put all of our stuff up on the Gumroad page for free for those who are more price conscious.
The only reason our Trello thing is up is because a lot of non-homeschoolers do that. And so I was like, well, if they can pay $7.99. But for homeschoolers, it's pay what you want, because we just don't want it to be
we don't want to be
accessible for anybody.
And we have the YouTube channel. We do the vlogging. It's always been a passion for us to help people. That's been our cornerstone of the podcast. It's kind of a guiding principle, which is to, just help as many people as possible to get through, this crazy thing called homeschooling. And
it's a wild time.
Well, it's so wild because it's so different for every single person. We've interviewed so many people. We see so many different homeschooling families at our parent partnership. Our school added 300 families this year. We're up to over 1,000 children in our school. It's just shy of the public school, high school in our local area. So last week was mind blowing. I have been at this school for 4 years. I have never seen that many people on campus before. It was unbelievable. It felt like, when everybody has the New Year's resolutions and they go and join, the fitness center down the street.
The gym is packed.
And the gym is packed in January. And then all of a sudden, February, it's a little nicer. And March, by the time, April rolls around, man, that place is empty. And I kind of think it's going to feel like that in a couple months. But man, there were so many families. And what was so cool is you saw so many young families. You saw so many different people who knew each other. You saw so many different types of families,
and both parents attending the first week of school with their kid, because that's what's gonna taper off.
I was suspecting it was due to the Boeing strike right now.
Yeah, it might be. But that's why it should taper off, is because more parents will be comfortable having their kids on campus and not needing to walk them to every class and that kind of stuff. And but it was cool how many both parents came to see, and grandparents were on campus, and it was just. I mean, I've never seen a choir class that full.
No, oh my God.
Goodness,
30 kids or something. It was
like 35, I think. Jeez. Is what they said on the enrollment, which was wild. So yeah, it's true. Like it's crazy. I feel like it is growing. I don't have any statistics to back that up, but I feel like it is. And the hard thing about it is that students like us are technically, we didn't file an intent to homeschool because we do go to this parent partnership for these enrichment classes. So when you look at what's the number of homeschooling families in our state, it's
depressed because of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's totally skewed because it's you have, almost 1,100 students just in this district that are homeschooled that actually are going to say they're public school on the, official tally. And we have a lot of parent partnerships in this state. So it's really skewed, but I do feel like it's growing. Mm-hmm. I feel like people are seeing it. And every year that goes by and our kids are still very normal and still not whatever vision of not normal people have.
Horror show they think
yeah,
it is.
People have this, who have never homeschooled have this vision in their head of what the quote unquote not normal kid is going to be, as if there is anything that could technically be normal. It's just such a silly word. But yeah, our kids keep getting older and it's like, oh yeah, we homeschool them, and everybody's like, oh, cool. Okay. And everybody, it seems like as the years go on, more and more people are like, oh yeah, I've thought about homeschooling, or yeah, my friend does it, or yeah, I just feel like it's growing.
I think it's a path more and more families are finding to be the one that they want. And I'm just happy that we're able to help as many of those families as possible find a secular option, and navigate through the wild world, because we have 50 states here, and obviously the overseas people have their own rules, but we have 50 different regimes here.
Yeah, it's true.
And in a lot of respects, it's even, the state kind of determines what you're doing, but even within the county, you'll have different geographical issues and different co-ops, or maybe you're in the kind of a rural area, you don't really have many options. Maybe you don't want to do that. It's almost down to the county or the region that you're in, that there's so many different factors that affect whether or not you want to homeschool, and
how you would do it if you were going to.
Yeah, maybe I'm 50 miles away from a library. Maybe I can't use a library, or maybe I don't have the resources, the money wise, to buy a bunch of books. I've got to use the library, right?
Yeah, there's no secular resources in my area,
or there's no secular groups, and it's just. There are so many there's maybe 1,000 different options probably that most people are facing, not just the 50 states within the rules, but also the nuance of homeschooling. I think a lot of that factors in, and I'm really happy to be able to supply as many answers to that as possible to help as many families as possible. Yeah. Not just homeschool, but I want people to homeschool successily. Whether they continue homeschooling, or they, are going to transition back into public school because of some reason, or that's part of their plan. I want them to have a good experience. I want their children to have a good experience. I want them to get out of it what they need, especially in that moment, because even if you're going to homeschool the whole way, hopefully we are going to, or even if you're just choosing to homeschool for a short period of time because there's some issue that you're dealing with, I really hope that whether it's a long or short period of time, that it's a good experience for you. That's something you look back on. We run into more and more people that say, "Oh, I was homeschooled for a couple of years," or "I was, my mom pulled me out of school because of bullying or something, and homeschooled me for a couple of years and then transitioned me into a different school, or we moved, or, we moved overseas, and the schools there for, for the local schools weren't acceptable for us. And we, because we're on base and we have to do these type of things. So homeschooling was better for us. And I just want that experience for people to be as good as possible, because it is a lot of work. It is a scary thing.
Yeah, definitely it is.
It's a big burden, that you have to put on your shoulders. It's a fun thing to do, but there's also a lot of, it feels like there's a lot of risk. I don't think there's a risk, but I think there's a lot of like uncertainty and a lot of fear and anxiety around it. So I hope that this podcast and the hope of the work that we've done has just helped even just move the needle a tiny bit. I mean, there's millions of homeschoolers, and our reach is thousands.
Yeah.
And so,
no, that's totally true. We are a very small drop in this big bucket.
But I'm hopefully the ripples move out and we help people, and then they can help people. And even if like, our impact is like 3 orders down the line, and the people who are getting helped have no idea we exist, but they're being helped by people who are being helped by something that we said on a podcast. Yeah. I think that's that's really what we're trying to shoot for. And we just want this to be a good experience, and make it a valid option for education. I think that's, we've only been allowed to homeschool legally for, the last like 35 years. I think that was the national law that was passed, and which made it kind of a national option. And so we want to be able to continue that and make that a viable thing for people, just as normal as going to public school or going to private school. Homeschooling is just as normal as that. And that's a good option to choose and to consider. And I think that's the hope. And I think for our podcast is to make sure that's a reality.
Yeah. And to make sure that everybody feels like they have the option, to do what they feel is right for their kids and their family, and, do that without judgment. And, if we could provide some resources that help, that's great. And so, whatever new areas we try to come up with new things, we're like, oh, okay, there could be somebody in this situation that would need XYZ. Okay, let's think about how we do an episode about that, and how we could do some research, and maybe we know we're very busy. We know that you all are extremely busy.
Extremely busy.
And if we can try to just summarize and synthesize this information for you and take something off your shoulders. The other thing I'm really passionate about with this is that we moms are, especially, and I know that there's moms and dads and grandparents and all kinds of different folks that listen to this, but especially for the ladies, we are really hard on ourselves. Way harder than I think men typically are. We're really bad with the mom guilt. It's just totally a thing. Mm-hmm. And so my big thing about this podcast is I always really want it to be a very hopeful thing and a very reassuring thing, so that you can leave it going like, I feel like more capable or more hopeful or calmer about this when I left this show than when I started this show, whatever it was, because I just always want us to keep that in mind, that we just need to be kind to ourselves. We're trying to do this amazing thing for our children that is really, really hard sometimes.
Very hard.
Yeah, it can be, very difficult depending on the day. And it can be super rewarding as well. And even when it's very hard, it's still the right thing for us. Mm-hmm. And there may be a time when it's not the right thing for your family, and you have to make that choice too. And then you need to be kind to yourself about that. So that's my other big goal here, is just to provide a lot of reassurance. I want this to be a very reassuring podcast.
Absolutely.
You got this.
We
got this.
And I think that's been our guiding light. So
together,
as we wrap this up, I thank you for all your hard work. And I thank you, people listening on your earbuds. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you too for doing this with me.
Stay with us. We have our favorite type of podcast that we do is a Homeschooling Journeys podcast coming up next week. So what better to talk about what we have done with, what is the hopeful element, which is new families doing homeschooling. Mm-hmm. So look forward to that next week. And we, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much for all the support.
On to 500 episodes and hopefully 500,000 downloads.
Onward.
Onward. Thank you all so much. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!